right now we want to turn our attention to Jerusalem, the city of the great king. I'm joined by Dalton Thomas. He and his wife Anna live in Iraq with their 4 sons. They've recently moved there. Dalton is a pioneer author and filmmaker, the director, editor, and director of photography of the Covenant and Controversy series, a brand new video just being released now. We wanted to be among the first in the world to make this known through our radio broadcast. You're going to be excited to hear about this. Dalton, welcome to the Line of Fire.
Dr. Brown, it's a privilege to be with you.
Where are you right now, Dalton? I'm
in northern Iraq. I am in Saran. It's about equal distance from the Iranian border, Mosul, and the Turkish border. It's like right in the middle. We're about maybe 70 kilometers as the crow flies from Mosul.
Why in the world would a young married man with 4 little kids move from the United States over to Iraq?
Well, I think my family and I were living in Turkey. We were living here there as missionaries, and we were working to make much of King Jesus. And when ISIS came on the scene and Fallujah fell, I think we started paying attention to Syria and Iraq in a focused way. And then when Mosul fell, we started looking at it in an even more focused way. And so we made some scouting trips over here in the months that followed the fall of the city. And my wife and I felt led by the Lord to put our roots down here and to serve among the ongoing and escalating refugee conflict, both the Syrian civil war and the issue with ISIS. And it's a privilege, sobering days to be able to labor for the gospel here.
What's life like all around you?
Well, right now it's quite on edge with the looming liberation of Mosul. I think on one hand, it's been the most talked about military campaign in the history of military campaigns in one sense, in that it's been, they keep saying it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. They've been saying that for 2 years now, but it's definitely coming. So we were just on the front lines a few days ago in eyesight of the city center itself, Mosul, because we're working with pioneering medical programs to serve Peshmerga, who are really on the front lines of the fight against ISIS. And they have, only a few villages left before they're at this, essentially the gates of the city. At that point, Iraqi forces and coalition forces could actually, enter the city at that point. It's unclear whether that will happen, in the near future, whether that will happen in the new year. We don't know. We do know that Peshmerga forces have done about all they can do at this point. We know they won't take the city because of the ethnic, religious tensions there, that the Iraqi forces will be the ones to actually enter the city and, quote-unquote, liberate it. So it's definitely on edge. The UN estimates possibly 1.2 million displaced people. I think the number's probably more like 600,000 or 700,000 from inside Mosul will be displaced when the actual campaign gets underway. So, yeah, we're looking at a looming military conflict, an escalating refugee displaced people's situation. So we're trying to figure out ways that we can pioneer and serve in a very practical way moving forward in a Christ-like, compassionate, gospel-rooted way that would put us right in the heart of the, probably what is the most severe human misery on the planet right now in terms of what's going on in the Levant between the Syrian civil war and the whole issue of the Islamic State.
All right, when you talk about this severe human suffering, massive number of displaced families, individuals, the needs being far, far greater than the ability to meet those needs, just paint a picture for me of how some of these families are living.
Yeah, I think I'll highlight one community in particular, and that being the Yazidis. I think all of us watched, CNN footage of Sinjar Mountain, Shingal area. It's the northern Iraq, right on the border of Syria. It's an ethnic Kurdish community, but it is one of the most isolated and closed religious communities on the earth. Joshua Project used to have them at the top of the list, of unreached, unengaged, isolated peoples. They were the target of the Islamic State in the early days, August 3rd, August 4th, when the genocide happened. The UN has confirmed around 100 mass graves, and, on a daily basis, we interact with family members of those whose families were either executed in the genocide or who are still missing. And so, yesterday we were in a makeshift camp with seven Yazidi families in one house, and all of them have girls, daughters, mothers, sisters who are still inside, somewhere between Mosul and Raqqa, somewhere in the Islamic State, and they're hoping that maybe one day they'll see them again, but they're not sure. And so I think the Yazidi community is probably hit the hardest because of the religious, ethnic schisms there. I think there was Shiite Kurds suffered immensely under the Islamic State, and so a lot of people are critical of the situation because it seems as though governments aren't taking proper care of Christian refugees. And as one who's here on the ground, that kind of bothers me because there just aren't that many Christians here. The vast majority of the people affected, my point is that it's not strange that Christians aren't prominent receiving care. The point is that the vast majority of the people who've been suffering under the Islamic State are either Shiites, Muslims, Arabs, Kurds, or Yazidis. And so there was a large Christian community that's been driven out of the Levant, but they were still a minority. And I make that point because I think this is the most open door we've ever had to serve some of the most isolated, suffering, brainwashed people groups in the earth. In terms of Syria and Iraq, these peoples have suffered immensely through Islamic persecution, even within the House of Islam, between the Sunni Shiite divide and now the Yazidi suffering at the hands of ISIS. It's incredible suffering, and you can't. It's almost, you don't have words to talk about it because of the magnitude and the depth and the scope of it and how many people have been affected. And I think the worst part about it is that no one will ever be brought to justice for it. There won't be a Nuremberg trial. There won't be people held accountable. There won't be indictments. The ICC won't be involved. It'll be very minimal. And I think that's probably the worst part about it, is that history will just barrel on.
And Dalton, as you're in the midst of this, and again, you're conveying things in words as best as you can, but we can't imagine what they've gone through. The families, the girls sold into sex slavery, then they escaped just to commit suicide because of the shame they live with and the torment and terror of the parents. But we've just got a little over a minute before the break. You're there as Christians, wife and 4 kids. People see that. They see you're coming to a dangerous part of the world. They have to understand you're there out of love. What do they say to you? Do they ask, why are you here? Or what's their response to your family? Incredible love, incredible warmth and affection. It's astounding. There is no more wider or more effectual open door in the world right now than there is in the Levant. The risks are real, the crisis is real, the dangers are real, but the open door, I don't think history has ever seen anything like this, ever in the Islamic world in terms of the openness that we have. And my kids are probably the most Facebooked people in the world. We can't go anywhere without people taking pictures of these little chubby-faced, little, blonde-haired, fair-skinned kids. And no, we feel at home here. We feel loved and taken care of. Our neighbors are all Peshmerga, and we feel safer here than I do in the U.S., to be honest. Amazing. All right, Dalton, we come back. I want to talk about the new video, City of the Great King. Friends, this is powerful. This focuses on Jerusalem. It's eye-opening, the spiritual and even end-time significance of Jerusalem. We'll be right back with Dalton Thomas, live from Iraq. Thanks so much for joining us on the Line of Fire, 866-348-7884. We're going back to Iraq, live in Iraq. Dalton Thomas, producer of the brand new film, The City of the Great King, part of the Covenant and Controversy series. Dalton, before we talk about the film itself, take a minute to explain why Jerusalem should matter to every believer in the world today.
I think that's the great ultimate question of the ages in many ways. I think bottom line, Jerusalem matters because Jesus said it does. It doesn't really matter whether we think it matters or not. At the end of the day, Jesus has considerable, formidable, immutable zeal for the city of Jerusalem based on an irrevocable, eternal, binding covenant with covenantal provisions that cannot be ratified. It can't be changed. It can't be undone. It can't be modified. It has been ratified by his blood. It's been secured by his blood. So, I think on one level, there's lots of logical things that we can do to explain why it matters. But really, at the end of the day, it matters because the man that we love and worship, the man who bled for us, who died for us, who purchased us and saved us, he made promises to that city, and he's going to keep those promises. So to me, the issue of Jerusalem is not the issue of a city. It's really the issue of Jesus, because he has made promises to Jerusalem. So I think, as we barrel on closer to the end of the age, as we approach the return of the Lord, whether that's 10 years from now or 100 years from now, I think it's closer than 100, but who knows? Either way, the closer we get to that man splitting the sky, the more urgent, relevant, and pressing this whole issue of Jerusalem is going to be, because he's going to return and establish a government in Jerusalem. And if we oppose that on political, theological, moral grounds, we're going to find ourselves in an antagonistic relationship with Jesus, even though we profess to love, worship, and follow him. So bottom line to me, it's a Christological issue. It's the issue of Jesus, not the issue of geopolitics.
What makes this video, this new DVD, so powerful and compelling in your view? What's going to happen to the viewer? What are they going to experience? What's going to happen to their thinking, their mindset as a result of watching this?
Well, my hope, I don't know if this will happen. This is my prayer, at least. I guess that's all I could say is this is my hope and my prayer, is that people would ask different questions related to the issue of Jerusalem. Because I think in many circles today, the two loudest voices concerning Israel are, God, has, he has a new people and land doesn't matter, and he has, through the new covenant, he's created the church, and the old has passed away and is now obsolete, and supersessionism, replacement theology. On the other hand, you have very patriotic, nationalistic support of Israel that I think in many ways marginalizes the gospel, because it marginalizes the person and work of Jesus. And I think what we're trying to do through this series is to present a beautiful alternative, to kind of leave the argument room, so to speak, between those two voices and say, maybe there's another way. Maybe the gospel points us to a different plane of thinking related to the issue of Jerusalem that's neither replacement supersession theology on the left or patriotic nationalism that's devoid of the gospel on the right. And so my hope is through the series as a whole, people would encounter the gospel implications, the Christological implications of this whole mystery of Israel that's so dominated the minds of the prophets and the apostles. And particularly this second installment in the series, The City of the Great King, hopefully this issue of Jerusalem, people begin to see it not as a land dispute issue or an issue of national borders and territories or modern contemporary geopolitics, but they begin to think of it in terms of Christology and the person and work of Jesus. Who is he? What is he like? What does he care about? What is he doing? Because to me, those are the questions we need to be asking. And when you get answers to those questions, you see Jerusalem very differently than you do if you're in one of the two dominant narratives of either replacement theology or nationalistic Zionism that marginalizes the gospel.
And who are some of the folks that appear on this video? Obviously, I'm on it and get to do some narration and answering questions. Who else is on this?
Yes, it's a 5-part series. So we're 2 films into it. This is the second film. We're going to do one each year, and each film will have a slightly different lineup. In this film, you were in it, which we're incredibly grateful for. We have such deep appreciation and affection for you and the way that you've pioneered this message. We're really, in a way, standing in a continuum of what you've been saying for decades. Scott Volk, our dear brother, we're grateful for Scott. Joel Richardson is in it. He's a dear friend of ours. And then our core team it will be in all the films. So Stephanie Quick, our developer and producer, Michael Reynolds is also one of our core writers. And we've also had the privilege of some of our other friends, Samuel Whitfield, Stuart Greaves, Barry Horner, and Reggie Kelly contributing to it. And each film will, some of these, in fact, the interview that we shot for you, Dr. Brown, was to be exclusively for the first film. But there was so much good stuff in your interview that we as a writing team, we said, we need to include some of what he said in the second film as well. So you snuck in there, Dr. Brown.
Snuck in, yeah, with a nice close-up of my mustache, too, throughout. I did notice that. Yeah, and Dalton, it's interesting, and we've just got a little over a minute before we're done here, but it's interesting that you, without a physical or historic connection to Israel and the Jewish people, because of your devotion to Jesus and the Word of God, have gotten a tremendous burden for Israel and for Jerusalem.